Tenzin, let's talk about values. If we can teach values, or what can be done with values, because many there is confusion about this theme.
True, true, true. I think, traditionally we are used to the idea that we get values from our parents or families or religious systems or the organizations that we work in, that they would give certain kinds of values. But what's most important is for individuals to go through the process of establishing values as part of their own identity. Who am I as a human being? What am I as a human being? Those are all value propositions. So if you create a mechanism by which people begin the sense of critical thinking and reflection, to begin to start what values should be part of my own identity, what kind of person do I wish to be, and then learn the mechanics of when do I apply those values, in what context. Because one cannot become a self-righteous individual. See, the problem is that we have either we have unethical people or we have self-righteous individuals.
That it's almost the same,
right?
At the end.
Exactly. But what we need to do is create a whole new platform of individuals who take part and delight in taking process of this self-reflective process of understanding what my values are. And then giving them the training behind how to make value trade-offs. Because on a daily basis, we make value trade-offs. We choose sometimes loyalty over honesty. We choose sometimes, trust over something else. But are those judgments, are those decisions happening mechanically? Or why are we making those kinds of decisions? This is something that we can inform ourselves and train ourselves in.
And how can be done?
Well, I think part of it is a process of self-awareness. So self-awareness in the sense that individuals go through a process over several weeks or months to try to understand which values should be part of my own identity, I as a human being, or the role that I play as a parent or a professional or an employer. And then the other part of it is that have this sense of radical honesty, because generally when you ask people, are you honest? Yes, of course I'm honest. Are you kind? Of course I'm kind. But then in critical situations, you see them not applying those values. So on and off, people do believe that they're kind and honest, they just don't know how to apply it. But this is the process where they, with this sense of honesty, they think about, well, I would like to be an honest individual, but I'm not always honest. What is the gap? And then they try to sort of fill that gap by daily changes, day-to-day changes, being aware that in this scenario now, I'm going to make this kind of decision that is going to be congruent with my set of values.
Yeah. And another way is also empathy,
yes,
and having a role model,
right,
but in the good way of saying role models, because nowadays we have as role models everything,
well,
and it doesn't give us the experience of how an ethical person
right
would feel.
That is correct. See, part of the challenge is that we're a bit confused about role models. We live in an era where there's a lot of talk about leadership, but if you look around the world, there's tremendous leadership deficit. Right? So you have all these programs on leadership, but there are no good leaders. Right? And what generally happens is when we talk about compartmentalization of values, so people will have role models. For example, in business scenario, they will have certain kinds of role models. But then when you ask them, well, but what kind of person would you like to be? And then they will start saying, well, I want to be like Mandela or Gandhi or this kind of individual. But then what happens is that they have elevated those individuals to such a high level that then they say to them, well, I cannot be as great as those individuals, so I cannot have those values. This is the kind of excuses that we want to overcome. That every human being has the potential, given the right kind of training, the right kind of nurturing, to go through those kinds of value proposition. And most important thing is, at the very basic, is empathy training. Is that empathy is one of the primary governing forces in creating this wholesome fabric of human society. Right? We have to move beyond just a biological sense of empathy. We have to truly understand how to build this empathy so that we can utilize it not only in connecting with people that we like, but with strangers and people that we don't like.
And in this way, we have learned very much about neuroscience.
Yes.
What neuroscience tells about it?
Well, neuroscience tells us that it can change the structure of your brain. It tells us that, you meditate on empathy and compassion and you see changes in prefrontal cortex. So it's not just, some soft, wishy-washy quality. It has real changes in your brain, you see. And then, reversibly, it also tells you about how you relate to people, how you make certain kinds of decisions. And it tells you things like, you know, if you're building a corporate environment, if you're building a team of any form, that if people are operating out of compassion and kindness, chances are that that environment will do much better in the long run than an organization or environment where people are cutthroat and jealous and envious. You see? And we have data, showing that compassionate leaders build much better organizational structures.
But in this way, we also have to fight against prejudices
Yes.
that are there.
Yes.
For example, in Mexico, we have a song that says, "For what is worth to be a good person, if the bad people are going to take you
right.
like a ball kicking around." Really, we have that that song.
See, I think every society has a version of that song. Every society does. And see, I like to think of myself as a pragmatic individual. I'm not an idealist who thinks the world is going to change tomorrow. But even from a pragmatic perspective, I've often posed this question to society at large, which is that if we truly believe that in order to be successful in this world, we need to be greedy, we need to be deceitful, we need to be unkind, then why don't we just teach those qualities to our kids? We should teach those qualities to our kids in a manner that by the time they're 10 years old, they're experts in greed. By the time they're 15, they're experts in deceit.
But we teach them these values because, we don't say it loudly.
We don't say that.
Because it's not politically correct.
Right.
But at the end, we say to our children, but just beware and you take advantage of that kid.
Right. But on the other hand is we don't expect the kids to exercise those values towards us.
Yes, exactly.
That is the challenge. Is that first thing is that we send confusing messages to kids.
That's what I'm talking about.
So we send confusing messages. Kids are confused about what values to propose and so on. The second thing is that we want those values for ourselves. Like, I would like you to trust me. I would like you to be honest with me. I would like you to be kind to me. But we are not willing to return those qualities back. That's hypocrisy. You see, that's incongruency, and that's a recipe for social disaster. You see, the next thing we have to understand is that, social change is not a spectator sport. Meaning that we cannot just sit quietly, be cynical, and say, well, the system is like that and the world is like that. Every generation that says that the system is like that, the world is like that, they are simply perpetuating the same old system and making it strong. This is how our brain works. If we don't interject habitual patterns, habits get stronger over a period of time. If you look at the social brain, that's how the social brain is going to work. So the bottom line then becomes is who's going to take the risk and start interjecting it such that the future generation, not only the current generation, but also the future generation can begin to live in a society where trust and kindness and these things become social policies.
I understand what you say, but the problem is that many people that really want to change, they see that they are such a little piece among the whole context that they say, Kissinger can decide it, but I don't have any power.
Yes. I like a quote by the Dalai Lama on this. He says that if you ever believe that you're too small to change, try to see how much grief an ant causes an elephant. You see? And when you look at most successful social movements, you look at Gandhi, you look at Mandela, you look at Tutu, you look at Mother Teresa, meaning most people that we admire who have actually made a dent in society, they all began as small individuals who then created social movements. You see? Now, the thing is, you can say that it's only happening in pockets here and there. But we also have to recognize that the current generation of youth is perhaps one of the most caring generation of youth in the sense that they do want to change the world. They do want to see a positive change and positive impact on the world. The question becomes for the previous generation is, are we going to support it or are we going to create an obstacle?
and then we need teachers.
Exactly.
And we need good teachers.
Yes, yes.
How we can really model ourselves
Right,
in
right.
these good teachers.
And this is exactly one of the signature things of our program, this program called Transformative Teachers that the center launched about 2 years ago, with the idea that it's not sufficient, it's not just enough for teachers to teach content in school, math, science, things of this nature. In fact, nowadays, online systems are becoming much more prevalent for those kinds of learning. So the idea then becomes is what is the role of a teacher in a classroom? And it's these kinds of qualities, meaning teaching with values, empathy, kindness, forgiveness, fortitude, these kinds of values that we believe should be taught in school systems, but not as separate subjects. But it should be incorporated in regular methods of learning. And we are seeing certain successes in that in schools that we are engaging with.
The children at the end learn more by
observation,
seeing,
by observation,
the
yes.
eyes of the teacher.
Exactly.
They see much more than the content
Right.
that they are teaching.
And that's why we say the teacher needs to be transformed and be in the classroom. It matters a lot who's teaching. Not what they're teaching, but who's teaching. And that's why the idea, when we first started teaching transformative teachers, teachers would come in and they will say, just give us the content. Tell us what to teach the kids. And we'll tell them, this is not about the kids, this is about you as a teacher. First go through this process of transformation, the kids will learn on their own, just by observing you.
Tenzin, thank you very much.
Pleasure, thank you so very much.